Tonight, after a manhunt, an arrest, and a flight from Pennsylvania, Luigi Mangione is in New York and has been arraigned on new federal charges.
Now we're learning new details about the alleged plot in the murder of the UnitedHealthcare CEO, Brian Thompson.
We have live team coverage. Court and public safety reporter Alice Gaynor was inside the courtroom for the arraignment. Let's begin with Lisa Rozner live outside federal court with some new details on the charges he faces. Lisa?
Well, Christina, Maurice, compared to last week's outburst, Mangione appeared much calmer today. Among the 4 federal counts he is facing, it includes stalking and murder, and the complaint details notes he made dating back to August. Luigi Mangione's day started with a 90-minute court proceeding in Pennsylvania where he waived extradition and was accompanied by NYPD detectives on a flight to New York. Exclusive video shows Mangione touching down at MacArthur Airport on Long Island just after noon before he was taken by helicopter to Manhattan. Mayor Adams there to see Mangione with his own eyes.
There are mechanisms in this country on how to organize on those issues of concern. You don't use a gun. And anyone that celebrates that, it is vile and it is sending the wrong message.
In the December 4th murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside a Midtown hotel, the U.S. attorney is charging Mangione with 4 counts, including stalking and murder through use of a firearm. It says Mangione used a cell phone and the internet to plan. The complaint has new images from December 4th, allegedly showing Mangione leaving Central Park after the murder without a backpack. It also shows the gun and silencer found on Mangione when he was arrested at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania, as well as a letter Mangione allegedly wrote to the feds and a notebook. On August 15th, the FBI says Mangione wrote, "The details are finally coming together. I'm glad in a way that I've procrastinated because it allowed me to learn more about Company One. The target is insurance because it checks every box." And in a letter to the feds, Mangione allegedly wrote, "I wasn't working with anyone. This was fairly trivial. Some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, a lot of patience. P.S. You can check serial numbers to verify this is all self-funded, my own ATM withdrawals." It's expected this evidence will also play a role in Mangione's case with the state. The Manhattan District Attorney is expected to arraign him soon on 11 charges, including first-degree murder and in furtherance of terrorism.
We charged him here in Manhattan earlier this week with murder in the first degree, among additional charges, which carry the maximum sentence of life without parole.
And so tonight, Mangione is being held in a federal prison. It is not clear when he will be arraigned on those state charges in Manhattan Criminal Court. We're live in Lower Manhattan. Lisa Rozner, CBS News, New York.
All right, Lisa, thank you.
And Alice Gaynor was inside the courtroom for the arraignment. She joins us now live. So, Alice, last time we saw Mangione, he had an outburst. He was angry. What was he like inside the courtroom today?
Well, Maurice, you probably saw those pictures and videos of him when he was being transferred in that orange jumpsuit. That orange jumpsuit was placed into a brown paper bag, handed to his attorneys. He had changed into a dark sweater with a white collared shirt underneath, khaki pants, orange sneakers. His ankles appeared to be shackled, but his hands were not. He walked over to the defense table. He nodded at his attorneys. He was holding a set of papers, presumably the criminal complaint, but it's unclear what he was holding. He would glance down at them, or he would look directly at the judge, sometimes tilt his head, and he only answered yes when the judge asked him questions. She read his constitutional rights, said, "Do you understand?" He said yes. She also asked, "Do you understand what you're being accused of?" And he said yes to that as well. So we did not see any outbursts. He just sat there quietly. Again, just small interactions with his attorneys. At one point, I want to mention his attorney, his defense attorney, Karen Friedman Agnifilo. Her husband is also on the case with her as well, Mark Agnifilo, but she's the lead attorney. She stood up. She was seeking clarification. She said it was kind of surprising and suggested maybe this was surprising to the Manhattan DA's office because they fully expected to be at state Supreme Court today for his arraignment on that 11-count indictment that the Manhattan DA's office brought. She says instead they were here in federal court today, which they were not expecting, and she questioned whether or not the Manhattan DA's office was expecting that as well. We know that Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg said that the agencies are working parallel to one another, state and federal officials. Prosecutors responded to her inquiry by saying they would address this during the proper time. Today was just an initial first appearance on this federal criminal complaint. The judge told the attorneys get together after today's court date and discuss these cases together.
All right, Alice, thank you for that update. Joining us now to discuss the charges Mangione is facing is Fordham law professor Cheryl Bader. Professor, once again, thanks for joining us. I'd like to start off where Alice just ended, and that is these federal charges that suddenly appeared today. It does feel as though that the defense was caught off guard with this, with his lawyer even mentioning that, you know, we were all expecting to face these charges that DA Bragg, brought up against my client. So what do you make of that? And why suddenly is this a surprise appearance at federal court today?
Yes, so I think everyone was surprised. Even the judge in Pennsylvania seemed surprised. So usually murder is prosecuted by the state where the murder occurs. But here we have this parallel federal case, which involves charges of interstate stalking. So in other words, he planned this murder allegedly, out of state, traveled on interstate highways to New York, committed the murder here, and then allegedly, left the state. So we see that those charges that involve interstate travel, firearm charges, which are also within the federal jurisdiction. And the murder charge here is murder using a firearm. So that's what gives it that sort of federal hook. And of course, this case has sparked national attention. And so I think the feds want to be involved as well. And it'll be interesting to see, who tries the case first. I understand that he's being held in federal custody. And so it'll just be an interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, fascinating dynamic there, Professor. Talk about the dynamic there when you're talking about a local prosecutor and the federal prosecutors. It sounds like there's some tension here and everybody was caught off guard. How do you imagine this goes forward? I mean, could it jeopardize the case?
Well, sometimes you do have these turf wars, and, we'll have to see if everyone plays nicely in the sandbox. And really, a lot of it is a matter of who gets to go first, right? So we see this initial court appearance, but of course, the state has already sought an indictment in the grand jury. And so typically they might be the first to go because what we saw today in federal court was just an initial complaint, but the case has not been indicted yet. So again, one significant difference in the federal case is it involves the possibility of the death penalty. And of course, we don't know, we haven't heard from prosecutors whether they'll actually seek the death penalty, but that's something that the New York prosecutors can't do. It's not available in New York. Now, of course, either way, you're going to have New York jurors, and normally a judge decides sentence, but when it involves the death penalty, the jury decides. And so, unclear whether a New York jury will favor and vote for a sentence of death. And also, this is an unusual case. And even though it's a cold-blooded assassination, we've seen quite a bit of support and sympathy for Mr. Mangione. And so I'm not sure how that will play out in terms of the death sentence either.
So much going on there. Okay, so Fordham law professor Cheryl Bader, thank you for the insight.